Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome back to another Trotec Live on Fridays. Hope everyone's having a great day, and I'm so glad you could join us here live on YouTube, live on Facebook, no matter where you're watching from. I hope you'll say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. I really want to introduce you to my two guests today because today's going to be a pretty special stream. We did a launch for this machine a little while back, but at the time, we didn't necessarily have a lot of videos and things to go along with it. We've had some time now to practice with it. We've brought Tim on board, and Tim is absolutely a master. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good.
Very good.
Not a master, come on.
No. You're going to show it today.
Oh, of course.
Do you want to give us a little preview of like the sample you're going to be running today?
Yeah. So, if you have not seen our most recent upload on our YouTube channel, definitely think you should. But this was one of the projects that the co-op students and I've made on our Rayjet machine. So this was made by the r400, which is right here as well. This is a little wine box made by a Ukrainian artist. Looking great.
So cool.
It's so cool. I love it.
That door is gorgeous too. I know we're doing like a slightly simplified version of it today. I do feel like though I should mention that like that door is a good judge of like, if you can't figure out how to get into the wine box, it's a sign that you should not get into the wine box. You've had enough for today. As always, we've got Lev in the background helping us out with videos and things, popping up your questions in chat. So feel free to drop any question you have for us. Very special guest today, though. We have Rob joining us from Texas. How are you, sir?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me today.
Hey, we're thrilled to have you on. Rob is like the head of the, you told me you're sort of the head of the R machines for Trotec Laser USA.
Yeah. I'm in charge of the R series, the r400, the r500 in the United States. I've been with Trotec for about 3 years now, so I got transitioned to this product line at the beginning of the year, so it's super exciting stuff.
Awesome. We're really glad to have you, honestly. I believe you're our very first guest ever to join us from the United States for one of these. We've had a couple of customers on who've joined us from the US. We've just been spoiled, to be honest, in terms of guests that we've had on. But Rob is, I have to say, so tell us a little bit about your history in the laser industry, because I think it'll speak for itself. But
I've been in the laser industry for about 12 years now. Started in tech service and support, so it was a nice, smooth transition into sales. Love everything about laser technology, the graphic side of it, and just kind of creating new stuff, and then working with customers on different applications and stuff like that. That's the most exciting part, helping a customer grow their business.
Agreed. That's always my favorite is. We've been fortunate enough that the last two, I think, open houses we've had here in our Montreal office, we had a customer come in, decide at the open house, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make a purchase on, I believe it was a Speedy 300 at that time, and then come back to our most recent open house and get to tell us about the work that he's been doing in that time, working for local school boards and stuff. And that's always the coolest feeling, to sort of watch this person's like, oh, I don't know if I can make this happen. Like, I've kind of had this dream to work from home or have my own business. And then to see that, bloom into a full-time thing is really cool.
Exactly. That's like one of the most rewarding parts of this job.
100%. So I have to ask you, today we're focusing on the 400, the R400.
Yep.
You can see it here in the video. I really, really love this machine, but I will leave it to you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, if someone hasn't heard of the R machines before, whether they're, familiar with like the Speedy Big Brother or not, what would be your way of explaining, let's say, the R machines kind of in a nutshell?
Sure. The R series machines are our kind of entry level, affordable series machine. Do a lot of cutting, same kind of industrial standards that we have out of Austria for the Speedy series. You'll see the impact technology. You'll see the Rayjet Commander software. Super streamlined, easy to use. We don't have to use a third-party software. It's Trotec branded, so it's real nice and easy. And then if you've ever ran a Speedy series machine before, you'll notice the keypad, you'll notice the focus tool, and then the software looks like job control. So it's a nice transition. And if you've never ran a laser before, there's 4 steps to get a job, from the graphic software to your machine. So it's super easy to do.
I hadn't thought about that actually, but I would throw that to Tim. So Tim has been with us now 3-4 months. I ask you this literally every week.
Yeah,
4 months. I'm sorry, my memory's just trash. But I was going to ask, in terms of someone who got introduced to the Speedies a little while back, and now is like getting into the R machines a little bit more, or getting to use the R machines a little bit more. do you find that cross-pollination between the two kind of makes it easier to learn? So like the fact that the R machine has so many similarities with the Speedy kind of makes it, more of a one-to-one.
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely eases everything up. The keypad, again, all very familiar. I can see even in the video clip I have right now with the other camera. It should be right there.
Mm-hmm.
We have all the keypads, same keys, same focus tools. Everything is still very, very familiar. And Rayjet Manager is reskinned job control, which makes it even easier to learn. It's great for any sort of transitioning laser user from Speedy to the R series. It's really great.
Yeah, actually, I thought that's a very good point. Actually, so previously, the Rayjet Commander back in the day, I would argue was a little bit trickier to navigate around. But the new Rayjet Manager, like you say, is so near and dear to job control that if you're at all familiar with job control, which I would argue in general is pretty user friendly anyhow, but if you're at all familiar with job control, this will be a snap, no problem. Yeah. Kind of pick up and run.
No problem at all.
We had a great first question. I think I'm going to start kicking over to some questions here. It's about 10 minutes in. I think if you're joining partway through, of course, definitely as we go, feel free to say hello, toss any question in the chat. If we don't get to your question right away, rest assured I am watching them. We're gathering them up, Lev and I. We will throw them to these guys as the stream goes on. We might pause here and there for different sort of question breaks. But I really like some of these questions we're getting from the chat. The first one there, so I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the LaserBox Pro, but I will throw it over to Rob. If you were to compare, let's say the 400 in general, in this case, to perhaps a Glowforge machine, what would be the big differentiators?
The biggest difference is the table size. Compared to like the Glowforge Pro, this is almost double the table size. We have a motorized Z-axis, so the table can drop down about 8 inches, and then we can throw a rotary attachment in there for engraving on cups, tumblers, and then the Z-Travel allows you to mark on like larger boxes and stuff like that. So that's the biggest difference. The laser source, that we have 100 watts of laser power on this machine, and that comes standard. It does adjust down. We have a variable screen on the keypad where we can adjust it by a dial, or it's controlled in the software. And then the software itself running the laser is actually on the computer, so it's not on the cloud. So if you lose internet connectivity on the Glowforge, you kind of have to wait around until it comes back. Whereas we're kind of a local PC, so that's kind of the biggest differences. Besides that, and then kind of just the way this machine's built. If you look at the actual rail of the machine, the belt seals up all the axes and enclosures, so none of our bearings and our linear tracks are exposed. So it's just a well thought out machine.
That's true. That was one when I first started, I didn't actually realize was so important. But it was only sort of in getting to use the machine you realize. Just in the course of engraving and cutting, obviously you're creating all that dust, all that debris. If you have the mechanics exposed, it's just going to give you that much more likelihood of, potential for a belt or something to kind of get gummed up or get in trouble.
Exactly.
Coming from tech service also, it's nice that you have that sort of added side to your brain where you're like, oh, and I know actually that this is going to be dependable for the following reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
God bless you too, coming from tech service. That's got to be the toughest job at Trotec, I swear. It's very rarely that they get called out, but when they do, I know, it's always the pressure's on. Those guys are.
It's always nice when you can fix the customer's machine, though. They're turning into a happy camper.
Even our machine, I remember one time it's ever happened to me where I was at a trade show and the machine broke down and they came out right away. And I remember it's almost like the customer experience. Like you see them coming down the escalator in this case in like the white shirt with the Trotec logo and thinking like, hooray, they're here to save the day kind of thing. A couple more questions come from the chat really fast. I will address this really fast. So Carrie has a great question here about the price and the wattage. So when it comes to price, Carrie, we may not touch on price too much today just because it differs from area to area. So any price we were able to give you for Canada would be different from the US, would be different from Austria. But what I would suggest is just to get in touch with your local Trotec, whether it's in the US or in Canada, and your sales rep there be able to give you a price and a demonstration, of course. I appreciate it too. Thank you, Tim, by the way, for opening up the machine. I think as we're sort of talking through some of the stuff there, we can try and tour you guys around a little bit with the webcam there. I'm not sure I think it's HD, so we'll get a pretty good picture of it. But in terms of wattage drop, you touched on that really quick. The wattage for the R400, there are two different tubes for this machine, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, typically we sell 100 watt configuration. Yeah.
Very cool. Is that DC, that tube? Is it a
yes.
glass tube or okay?
It's a glass tube, yeah, DC.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I wanted to ask this one as well. Max height for a rotary. Does the R400 have rotary capabilities?
Yes, it does. It reminds me if you've ever seen a rotary on a Speedy 100. It's got the quick release on there, so you can run like products without having to unclamp it really fast. It is a cone style rotary, so kind of reminds me like a lathe. So we're not having to worry about handles or anything like that on like rollers. So it's a real nice product.
Very cool. Actually, that might be a great time. Could I ask Tim to maybe we'll start working on some of the wine box, because it just reminds me we could toss a wine bottle into the rotary at the end and perhaps do a double whammy in the same video.
Definitely.
I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but we were at a trade show once, and we had a wine bottle that we'd engraved that we'd filled up, long ago with grape juice. Just because, obviously it's it was an empty wine bottle already, and then we engraved it, and we wanted it to look, like it would in real life, right? And somebody just, I don't know why, maybe just a moment of, maybe it was a day or who knows, but somebody stole that bottle of wine, and I just imagine the disappointment getting it all the way back home and opening it up and finding like Welch's in the bottle. So Joey mentions, does the R500 or the 400 have a rotary attachment? So as we just covered off, the 400 does. The 500 actually, though, I'm not familiar. Would it be the same?
The 500 does not. The 500 is more of a large format cutter machine.
Yes.
So it's designed to do a 48-inch wide sheet. It's just it adjusts at the lens instead of actual the Z-axis. So we don't have a good picture of it on there, but the actual lens adjusts up and down. So it's a cool concept for kind of cheap material.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'll mention too, for anybody who's familiar with the Speedies, like Rob kind of touched on what I think is one of the coolest parts of these machines. So in terms of sort of ballpark price, they sit, in a general, at least in Canada, I should say, in kind of a lower, like one of the smaller Speedy sizes, but the bed size for the 400, if I'm not mistaken, is equal to the size of the Speedy 400, or at least very, very close.
Yeah, it's actually just a little bit larger. Yeah, it's 40.5 by 24.5, or 41 by 24.5. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's like, when he says large format, like you're really getting a heck of a powerful machine for your dollar investment here.
Yeah, some of the customer applications that we have for these machines, is you would think hobbyists to start with, but larger sign shops that just cut dimensional letters. It's very, very big in the educational markets, and then just for niche engraving for small stuff that just do larger objects that don't fit in a standard like Speedy 100. So lots of different applications. Great for cutting. The 100 watts is good for cutting up to 3H materials. Depending on what it is. And then, like I said earlier, the Z-axis does travel down about 8 inches, so you can put, engrave on like a barrel lid, or, some taller objects like a cigar box.
I think you made a good point too in saying that, certainly, as you say, hobbyist is maybe one of the first thing that comes to mind, but yeah, large format signage, of course. I think also because of the familiarity that somebody who's already used one of our Speedy machines will have with this machine, it strikes me that somebody who already has our Speedy machines and maybe thought about this as a second machine, so as a way to add, as you say, like that large format cutting capacity to the workshop, whatever it was, without necessarily the same investment level as a Speedy, but getting more or less that same quality of cutting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some of the things that we've kind of found out is that if we have a customer that has multiple Speedies, and they're great for engraving because the motion system speed. The R series is a kind of a great product to interject in there for cutting material down to fit in the machine, or cutting blanks and then letting the Speedies kind of engrave. So that's kind of what we've kind of seen in the US.
That's cool. I should ask Tim about, so maybe I'll get you to I'll pull up your screen here. We get to kind of show off some of the software, but
right.
Also the material that you're cutting, is that solid wood, veneer? I can't tell.
It is a veneer wood from our very own Trotec.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is, I believe, a Burke veneer.
Very nice.
3mm.
I love that veneer. It's so nice.
All available.
So that's the thing. So I spend enough time with these machines that I know that this isn't job control. But in looking at it, it is job control.
Yeah.
Actually, the UI, the user interface on this is super nice. again, if people that have seen job control, it's just a different shade of gray with some different buttons,
Yeah.
but same connectivity on the bottom, same job queue on the right, same material parameters on the left, so.
How do you find working with it, Tim, at this point? I mean, in terms of, I don't know if you ever used Rayjet Commander previously. It was, it was also good for different reasons, but I mean, especially when it came to rotary engraving, it could be, a bit of a challenge sometimes.
Right. Well, I've never seen the old Rayjet software. I've only seen this one, and to me, it's just job control to me.
Awesome.
They're exactly the same thing. Yeah, like Rob mentioned, just a different shade of gray, which isn't the end of the world, but it's exactly like job control. It looks principally exactly the same.
I should ask you too. So in terms of what you've got around the machine there, I know that the setup for, if I'm not mistaken, the setup for extraction on the R400 is a little bit different than what you would find on a Speedy.
Yep. Yeah, so we have a Quattro system in the back behind the machine. Then I believe this one is water cooled as well. So we have a water cooler unit attached to it as well. Yeah, this was also my first experience with a water cooled machine too. So it's a ton of stuff coming in at once. But yeah, so we got the Quattro water chiller in the back as well. Make sure this machine's running well.
Do you find any difference in terms of the performance though? Because it seems like in terms of your workflow, it looks pretty much the same as, a Speedy workflow, for what you're doing.
Yeah, more or less exactly the same. The Speedies, well, now that we have Ruby on them, it's a bit different.
True.
We still have to go through the Krell and Control P, so we still have to go through the printer driver, but it's more or less exactly the same workflow that I would have on Speedy machine. Just throw in a file, have it start cutting. I just sit wait for it to get cut now.
Sweet. So last question I have for you specifically about this particular project.
Yep.
Did you use like a makeabox.io or anything like that for the design of this project, or was this one that?
No. Yeah, this was, so we were fortunate enough to find a great artist on Etsy, and
Cool.
we bought the file from them. This was all in support for Ukrainian relief. So again, if you haven't seen that video on our YouTube channel, make sure to check it out. We have a ton of great projects. We have 7 projects in total. Make sure to check them out. Our co-op students did great work. All the artists did amazing projects too. So they turned out just so nice. They're amazing.
Awesome. I have to say, as if we planned that, Tim is exactly right. Definitely check out that video if you haven't. It's not only is it really impressive, but as he says, it's for a great cause. I think it's really cool. Left pulling up the file here, and Etsy. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. It is also in terms of just like it's a beautiful object.
Yep.
But hopefully the good cause just kind of pushes it over the top. But I love wine boxes. It seems like such a day in and day out thing, but day in and day out thing since I started working at Trotec. I have to say I didn't get to interact too many engraved boxes prior to this job, but good question from Amy. So the bed size of the R400, Rob kind of mentioned it earlier. It's just a bit larger than the Speedy 400. You said.
Yeah, 40.5 by 24.
Very, very cool. Almost actually enough to do like a full sheet all at once. Yes, 1030 by 630. Thank you, Lev. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll throw this over to Tim. So R400 or 500? Oh, thank you. Okay, so Lev pulled up a great question here from Barb. Can the R400 or the R500 do pass through? I'll have to throw that over to Rob. I'm not actually sure.
The R400 does not allow to do pass through. The R500 does have a pass through to where you can do a 48-inch wide sheet. However, safety precautions and depending on where you're at, might require safety glasses and just check with your local Trotec dealer for that.
Totally. Quick question from Matt, asking if we have a showroom or office in Washington. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Rob. I don't know if you know if
we do have one in the Seattle area. Currently, they do not have the R series machines, but they do have the Speedy machines.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I say too, the similarities between the two. I mean, at very least, even if you went to see a demo of a Speedy 400, not only would I hope you'd come away loving the Speedy, but it'll give you a very, very good idea of what to expect from the R. I have a question here from Lev in the back asking if maybe Tim could give us a quick walk through the software, just sort of step by step, really fast, if you don't mind.
Sure. All right. Well, like I mentioned before, it's extremely similar to job control. So we have our bed size over here. our current job that is running over here. If you have the job calculations turned on, which I usually do, just like in job control, we have all the settings on the left side. We have our jobs listed on the right side, along with the job preview, the plays button, the stop button, the fan on and off button. Everything else, that's the thing. There's really, it's tough to walk through this just because it's so similar to job control.
Job control.
It's so similar. But we have every setting, anything that was within job control, we have within here as well. So we have our material database, which is all right here. Everything running through, we can change all the settings that we need. We can open up any additional settings that Trotec throws at you. Again, all the great suggestions that we have here. So in terms of the software, it's job control. I can't lie. So to walk through this, simply we have everything that we have. We have settings. We could change the lens that we need here, set the material thickness. We could quickly change the engraving settings and the power settings here. As mentioned before, we have the bed size, the project itself that we're working on. Aside from that, it's job control.
It is. I mean, if you're not familiar with job control too, we have some great tutorials on job control on our YouTube channel that will let you kind of walk you through step by step. We only have the hour here where we have Rob, so we want to try and make the most of his time and his expertise. But if you're ever curious about literally every button in job control, I invite you to check out our YouTube channel, where I assure you there is an exhaustive breakdown of literally every single one. Laura, watching from Tennessee, welcome. I will say, now that we're 20 minutes in, about halfway through almost. Hello to anyone that joined kind of partway through. Very glad that you could be with us. Drop any questions you have for Tim or for Rob in the chat. Talking a lot about the R machines today and sort of how they compare to the Speedy machines and how they fit in our kind of greater ecosystem. You were talking a little bit earlier, Rob, about the type of customers that you had for these machines, and they kind of vary. But you mentioned specifically the educational market. I was wondering if you could kind of talk a little bit about, where these machines, like either in your mind or in examples, sort of fit in that area.
So in the United States, we've got a real big push for putting maker spaces inside of schools. So it doesn't matter the grade; it could be elementary, high school, junior highs, and stuff like that. Kind of markets are architecture, engineering, model making. So that's kind of the biggest ones for those. With the makerspace, you have the ability to cut just like projects like what we're doing now, with some engraving on them as well. So it's a real kind of cool thing, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist. These kids these days have technology like lasers and 3D printers and stuff like that. So when I was in high school, we didn't have any of that fun stuff. But having the ability to, it's for proof of concept, and cutting a piece of material and putting it together and getting your hands on it and kind of wrapping your brain around making a 3D model out of 2D material. It's just awesome. And then teaching them how to, use the graphic softwares like CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator or AutoCAD is just an added benefit that the laser can kind of produce product.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so that's a very good question from Joey. I will really quickly though ask Tim. So just as you see this video that we most recently put out on the YouTube channel, you were literally working with like high school students and design students and stuff with these machines. I mean, how did you find that they took to them? How did you find that the experience was? And sort of, there's not necessarily a lot of other, well, I see this. You touched on a good point, Rob, which is like from what I understand, the difference between high school now and high school when I went to high school, it seems like a world apart, to be honest. Makes me feel like a very, very old man, but
it happens.
But yeah, I was curious to hear from Tim kind of how you found that the students, what was their impression of the machine? How did they feel like getting their hands on it? That kind of thing.
Right. Well, thankfully, we started the high school students. We started them on our Rayjet 50 over here. So we started them on that and walked them through how to use the software, which they also found great. Thankfully, they were already very familiar with how to use Inkscape. So I was able to get them to learn how to use Corel, teach them the ins and outs, changing every cut line to a hairline, doing those things. Again, kids these days just happen to have all the technology. I'm saying kids like I'm not 22, but high school so much different now, and it's getting to a point where these are things that are becoming very, very plausible in just everyday life. We're not in the past where laser cutters are a very niche thing anymore. Stuff like the Rayjet 50, which is becoming more of a household DIY thing, it's really getting out there. So the high school students are able to really, really quickly adapt. They've used both Job Control, Rayjet Manager, and then Ruby. They were able to catch up so quickly. They were doing things that I wasn't even doing in my first couple of months. So trust me, these kids just go for it.
They had a good teacher. I mean,
I hope.
One thing I will say though, that like you're absolutely right though. Also, I mean, not to start the like back in my day conversation, but the availability of also tutorials and stuff like that, just through platforms like YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that. The availability for kids to learn Photoshop and Corel and like you say, the fact that they're already fluent in Inkscape. I would recommend this. So another market that certainly we see from time to time is people who purchase this as Rob touched on it, like a hobbyist, or perhaps someone who is retired looking to start a small business, somebody who's looking to start a business on the side. I would argue that you do not really need much in the way of machine experience to get this thing up and running and sort of get in there. I mean, you saw from Tim, like this wine box, it can be as simple as pre-purchasing a beautiful design from Etsy or from a space online, and then just implementing it yourself, either like in a business setting, or just for gifts and other cool things.
Exactly. Yeah, with the lasers, you see all the fancy boxes and stuff like that. The artwork is the hardest part. The lasering is maybe 20% of the actual using of like the laser. Setting the focus, picking the power setting. That's easy. Whereas drawing that box, I would have a tough time doing it. So artwork is the hardest part. There's tons of places where you can get good artwork. There's tons of tutorials online. It's just that's the most challenging part, in my opinion, is the artwork. But again, paying $15, for a box pattern that you own, and that kind of gives you concept of like what the artwork needs to look like, and then you can modify it to what you want to do. You can change it up to a floral pattern or find vectors online. So that's typically when I do like an on-site training and stuff like that. That's the kind of the hardest concept to understand. But once you get the graphic side down, the laser, it's just a big printer. We use light instead of ink.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's also very much trial and error. I mean, if the first time that Tim tried to cut that box, let's say it didn't cut all the way through, well, the material is still fine, the file is still fine. I mean, nothing's off or nothing's wrong. We just got to run it again with a little bit more power, and just sort of it runs on a very simple kind of binary. You can either slow the laser head down, or you can up your power. But once you kind of wrap your head around how the laser works, you're basically good to go for almost whatever material you want to try. If it's one of our materials, obviously we can sort of steer you in a direction to we can give you some suggestions. But once you kind of figure out how the laser interacts with the material, you can sort of just approach any new material the same way, try a few things, test it out, see what you get, and go from there. This question from Joe I want to throw to you, Rob. So are the lenses the same as the Speedy lenses, and if not, sort of maybe how do they differ? You can see the head assembly there, actually.
Yeah, so it is the same style of lens. It is not the same though. The focus tool is the same style, as you can kind of see in the video, kind of touches and falls off. It's the lens is physically a lot bigger. It's about a 2-inch diameter lens, whereas the Speedy is closer to about 1.25 inches. So it is not the same lens, but it's the same style and the same focus tool style.
True. If anyone, we got this question during the week. I had it from a customer actually, and I'll just throw it out here. It happened to occur to me. I've had people ask me why we use the focus tools instead of the autofocus. Partially, I think anyone who's ever been burned by thinking a machine has autofocus and accidentally crashing their head into a piece of cork, not that I know anyone who did that, certainly not myself, has done, you get nervous. But the bigger thing is, I think you'll never be more accurate than that little tool. I mean, there's just nothing better than, as I've said, you just drive it up until it kind of bumps it off, and then
exactly
you're in focus.
Yeah, and material is different too. It could be warped like a piece of wood. It's never flat. So being able to know exactly where you're focusing is great. That's why I show customers autofocus on some of the machines that have it, but focusing takes 5 seconds with the focus tool once you get good at it. So
absolutely. I'd never seen this video with this little box. This box is really, I gotta try to make that. Sorry. No, Rob's exactly right. Can I ask too, in terms of the different sizes of lens that you can get for this machine? Because you said like the housing is obviously a bit bigger.
Yep.
Is there like sort of a variety of, you know?
Yeah, we have 2 different lens sizes. We've got a 2-inch and a 4-inch lens. The 2-inch lens is the one that comes standard with the machine. It's a mix between engraving and cutting. When we switch to a 4-inch lens, that's for thicker materials where we don't want a lot of kerf on the side of the edges. Cutting, foam is a good example of that. It's not a clearance lens per se, whereas it's dropping it down a little bit further. It's just a different adjustment for the actual beam kind of curve.
Yeah, makes sense. Also, what I like about that selection is you've kind of got the gamut covered, right? I mean, most of what I would recommend to a customer in terms of just like general engraving would be either a 4-inch, a 2-inch, or maybe an 1.5 inch for really specific things. But like those are kind of the go-to, weapon of choice, really.
Yep. That's a cool feature that's in the video right now, the adjustable exhaust table. Like earlier when Tim was cutting the actual board, he had one of the sides shut, so it focuses the exhaust on one side. There is a downdraft port under like perfect timing that helps with cutting. So if you're not doing any cutting, you can turn it off just like that. But it's great for the bottom of your material. It kind of vents out below it. One of the things I would do on this particular one is I would block off the rest of the grid. You can use transfer tape to where it focuses that downdraft, but it's a good video.
That's a very good point. Also, I mean, obviously, huge shout out to Laser Dave. I believe, as Lev mentioned, he made this video for us, and it's just, there are no more informative videos in the world than
Laser Dave.
This also, yes, this brings up one more thing that is similar to the Speedy, and it's the nozzles in the head. Can you sort of give us a quick rundown of just when you might swap them or what you might use each one for?
So I like to use the small opening. It's kind of a subjective question because there's different users that love the bigger one versus the smaller opening. There's the example of the lens that slides out. It looks just like a Speedy lens. But the smaller opening kind of controls airflow a little bit more, whereas the larger opening gives you a little bit more clearance away from the cut. So if you notice your material's clogging it up, it is computer-controlled air assist inside of the Rayjet Commander. So per material, you can turn off the air. Our machines in the US include a compressor, but you can definitely use your own external air compressor. But we just need, between 10 and 40 PSI, depending on the material. Engraving doesn't require a lot of air pressure, whereas cutting, if we were doing this 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch birch plywood all day, the more air you have, the cleaner it would be on the material. So it keeps that lens nice and clean. We call it air assist, but it's really optics protection because it's keeping that lens from having to be cleaned every 5-10 minutes.
I'd never heard that before, but that actually I quite like that. I think that's a very good explanation. Yeah. I'll say too that I think, Tim, are you assembling the box right now?
I am, yes.
Sweet. Okay, let's see it. I would say too. Okay, thank you, Lev. So I was just gonna say, is that the map of the different showrooms across the U.S.? I think it was. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I think we currently have 12 right now. I'm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth office, but we've got support centers all over the United States. Obviously, we have tech support, but when we have support centers that are in your area, it's better than calling, one specific location. So, it's a good asset to have for Trotec. It's one of our selling points.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier too about the office in like the Washington area not having the R machines necessarily, but which locations in the U.S. might someone be able to go to if it happens to be close to them that would have the R machines?
Currently in the United States, we've got the Detroit, Michigan office. We've got our New Jersey office. We've got our Dallas-Fort Worth office, and then we've got our Southern California location. But we can also do an online demonstration as well if you're not close to one of those demo centers.
That's really great. I might, maybe, necessary business expense to visit each of those to make sure that I just get a real sense for, how the R machine is marketed in the United States. I will say, a couple more great questions in the chat. As Lev mentioned in the chat there, unfortunately, we won't be able to talk about price just because, again, it does differ from country to country. But if you reach out to your local Trotec, they would definitely be able to help you out with that 100%. We had a question too from Mr. Highvolt, who asked about is the laser tube glass tube or ceramic? It is a 100 watt DC glass tube, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Is this machine? So are you able to put in a ceramic tube as well, or is this machine a DC tube exclusively?
We're DC tube exclusive in the United States.
Cool.
Internationally, they do offer a Q line that has a ceramic tube and a glass tube. We're going to try to separate those to where it's just glass tube only, because the motion system of this machine is perfectly suited for the glass tube. When we start getting into the ceramic tube that can fire a little bit faster, that's kind of the constraint. So that's why we kind of keep that on our Speedy line.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think, and you can see it here in the workflow. I think I may have gotten to use a Q machine once, but I've never felt like the R machine was lacking, to be honest.
No. It definitely, when it comes to cutting, it's your wattage that's your speed.
Yes.
So if you have 10 watts of laser power, the machine's going to move along like a turtle. But if you have 100 watts like we have here, this is very similar to what a Speedy machine would cut at on the same material thickness. So cutting is where this machine's strong suit is, for sure.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. That's what gets me so excited about this machine is I really, and again, obviously, I have laser samples behind me. Like, take this with a grain of salt. But I would advise you to, come down and check out a demo for yourself if you ever have the opportunity. But I've never struggled in terms of, adapting a file that I would do on a Speedy for the R machines or vice versa. Particularly, as Rob says, if it's a cutting heavy file, the R machine is stellar, and particularly the R400 where you have the bed size, and then the combination of that with the 100 watts, as you said. I mean, there's not much more you could really ask for. I have a great question here too. So asking about, you were just mentioning about cutting through thicker materials. So cutting acrylic with a thickness of 5 or 8 millimeters, is that something that you would do with maybe the 4-inch lens? Because you mentioned about having the higher kerf or the, sort of.
5 millimeter is on the edge of a 2-inch lens. If it was the 8 millimeter acrylic, definitely would look at the 4-inch lens. During the process of passing through boxes like honeycomb, is there a trick or is there a solution? This standoff is a great idea as far as lifting the material off of there. Cutting 1/4-inch circles, if you don't want to cut these little stanchions, are great. But it's the elevation. The laser doesn't do anything to aluminum, but it will reflect off of it. So if you ever notice some tick marks in a uniform pattern, it's just reflecting off of your honeycomb or your aluminum grid. And just by elevating it off of it, just about an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, it goes away. It's a really cool idea. Just place those little stanchions randomly on the bed. I like to do it under the actual product as well. One of the things you'll notice if it's not under the product, that finish cut right there, you'll see just a little bit of a lip where it kind of drops down, but it's way better than actual seeing tick marks every half inch.
Yes, 100%.
And it actually helps a little bit with the thinning as well.
Absolutely, that's true. And then also the quality of the flame polish on the side is, I mean, virtually identical to what you would. Also, Dominic mentions, and I think this is a good, if you don't happen to have, or if you're in a.
I think we lost them there for a second, but yeah, placing Legos under there is really nice because you can kind of custom build your own shapes and stuff like that.
100%. And because I am just an enormous child, I actually have Legos here at my desk. So in a last minute crisis, I would be all set. That's a good question from Bob. Do we have the R400 at the Calgary office? I'm trying to think. Tim, did you get a chance to visit the Calgary office in the past? I think
no, I did not. No.
Not yet. Y'all got to go there. Okay, we've got another note on the list. Send Tim to Calgary. Yes, thank you, Lev. Okay, we do. Okay, awesome. You can reach out. Our salesperson in Calgary, Renee, would of course be very happy to have you for a demo. Question from Joey. I think we touched on this before, but not for the 500. So for the R400, you said there was a 2-inch and a 4-inch lens. Is the 500 like a similar setup?
It's the 2-inch lens. I will have to double check on the R500. I think it's only a 2-inch lens just because of the lens travel up and down. We've got about inch and 3/4 of travel up and down. So I don't know if they have a 4-inch lens for that. That's a good question, and I can put some comments in the bottom after we're finished.
Sure, absolutely. That's actually a good point too. If you are ever watching this on YouTube, you can always leave a comment below, and we will do our best to get back to you just as soon as we can. No reason we can't answer your questions just because you didn't see it live, but if you are joining us live, Huge thanks. So one thing I would, just because it happened to pop up, I know we were talking about this earlier, but seeing the mention of the interlocks, one question that we often get from schools and sometimes people who are newer to laser is in terms of safety and safety when it comes to the use of the machine. Is there any way, Rob, you could sort of talk us through some of the safety features that would, kind of run with an R machine?
So all of the Trotec lasers are Class 2 safety. Class 2 safety means if you open the lid while the machine is running, it will shut off the actual laser beam. The reason why it's not a Class 1 laser is because of the red dot. It's always on. So you'll see Class 1 and Class 2. Both of those are safe as far as machine operation. The R series has a shutter, so as soon as that interlock is defeated, it will put a piece of metal in front of the output of the laser source. So there's no option for that. And then we do have a laser safe tint that's on the glass. So depending on the material, it is safe to look at it. Materials like ceramic and glass are just bright in general when they're laser processed. So we don't kind of typically stare at those. And then you can always wear laser safe glasses if you use your Class 4, depending on where you're located at.
Absolutely, that's true.
But you can see the emergency stop there. It is key operated on those systems. And then that kind of adjustable knob was for the actual laser power setting. So if you're running a job and you think it's overpowering the material, we can turn it down mid-job, or vice versa. If we don't think we're cutting through, we can kind of turn it up.
Absolutely. I will mention too that the first time I ever saw that, I could not help myself but just fool around with that knob just because it's fun. Dominic asked about the water cooling on the R400. Tim, I know you are like in the midst of building that box. I don't know if you're able to. Oh man, he's a step ahead of me already.
Yeah.
There it is, even on the screen too. So the water chiller with this lovely kind of cream on rainbow colorway, very very lovely. But just a simple unit essentially that's plugged in right next to the machine. Obviously, it's small enough that you can just tuck it in behind the machine, depending on the scenario that you have it set up. But it's very non-intrusive, very kind of quiet. I mean, I would say that the sound or the volume of running these machines is more or less identical to the sound or volume of running a Speedy.
Exactly. Both machines use that 5200 series chiller. It requires 2 gallons of distilled water. It does communicate with the machine, so if you do not have your chiller on, the machine won't operate or interlock home. So it's a real kind of intuitive thing there. We do change the water out every 6 months, depending on how much you use it. That's really the only added maintenance to these DC tubes. One of the kind of benefits to it is if you are working in a hotter environment, instead of having an air-cooled tube, this water-cooled tube kind of keeps that temperature nice and calm and kind of steady. But adding that chiller, I still think the machine is louder than the chiller.
I think you're right, actually.
Definitely.
And I wasn't sure what to expect too when we very first installed the R machines, just because, I mean, typically with a Speedy, you would just have the air in the machine, but realistically, you don't even really notice it's going, aside from, like, say, replacing the water maybe every 6 months. But
yep.
I mean, you're being in Texas, as you said, being in the hotter environment, that might be actually something that you kind of have to concern yourself with, is make sure, that you're gosh, I'm trying to think of the right verbiage, like the way to talk about it. The laser kind of have a set temperature range that it's most comfortable in, right? Like
exactly. Yeah, typically ours is between, on a Speedy series is between 65 and 90 degrees. Obviously the operator has to sit out there and sand in that, but having that kind of cool thing on there, it just kind of keeps it consistent. So your setting is the same from the morning till the end of the day, on your shifts.
The operator serves as a first warning sign too, like the canary in the coal mine. If it's getting too warm in there, they're going to let you know real quick. Okay, Miles was asking about the color of the honeycomb. I believe it is a silver honeycomb table, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it is a silver kind of honeycomb. I've seen black as well on these. It just depends. I know the R500 has a silver one. On the R400, I can turn around real quick and look, but I think it is a kind of a bright silver. Typically on our Speedy line, it is an anodized aluminum black, but if you've lasered on it before, that black kind of goes away, and it's always when we do an install, like the first time, is it supposed to get that dirty? And yes, it is. It's consumable. So, I think they are kind of silver on the R series.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was gonna say, if you turn around and if there, I don't mean to alarm you, but there may be somebody watching over your shoulder there. I'm not sure if you noticed. question about cutting aluminum. So with this particular laser, because it is, if I'm not mistaken, it is CO2 exclusive, right? There's no fiber version of the R lasers. So you would be, I mean, you could do metal that had perhaps a Surmark coating to do like some metal marking, but aside from that, it would be kind of non-metallic, like organic materials only.
Exactly. None of the lasers that we sell really cut metal, with the exception of our fiber galvo lasers. But again, they're more for marking. To touch on the material, Surmark is still a great possibility with these machines. Anodized aluminum, or if you do like the powder coated tumblers, anything with a coating on there, we're removing the coating and stopping once we hit the metal.
Totally.
Cool.
Quick question also. I had one here. Yes, I really like this. So just in your opinion, Rob, I mean, obviously just one man's opinion, but you're a man who knows his stuff. Why might someone choose to buy an R500 over a Speedy? So what might be the reasons for that investment, one over the other?
There's a couple different applications. The first biggest one that we all talk about is price point. Where the R400 versus the Speedy 400, it's almost 2.5 times more the Speedy 400 is versus the R400. If you don't have the volume yet, the Speedy 400 is one of the most technologically advanced machines out there. It's one of the fastest in the industry. It's got all the bells and whistles. But if you are just starting off with, that's not really the machine I would look at. Obviously I would sell you one if we had to, but, whereas the R400, it does 90% of what the Speedy 400 does as far as applications and stuff like that. So it's a easier kind of way to get into, and the ROI on the machine, it pays for itself a lot faster, especially for somebody that does it. Now, not to say if you're running 24 hours a day production, the R400 is not really the way I would look at. I would still look at the Speedy 400. So,
absolutely, I think that's a good breakdown. I would say too that if you did have a particular application in mind, to bring it in, the best, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but certainly I think the best way always is we're very open to you coming for a demo with us and bringing your own materials, bringing your own files. If there's something you'd like to test, I mean, we'd always appreciate if you can send it to us ahead of time, just so we can have everything ready when you arrive. But in terms of, if you want to test a job on both the R400 and the Speedy 400, when you come and see us and see the differences for yourself, it's always something we're open to 100%.
Perfect.
One thing I would ask too, so you talked about like the ROI and the ability to pay off the laser. Is there sort of, I mean, obviously it varies from project to project, but is that something you'd usually want to go into with the customer, like looking at the ROI, or what would be the typical like payback rate for a laser?
Yeah, so on the R series line, typically we would charge in the US, $35 to $60 an hour per laser operation. And again, that's depending on where you're at, what you're doing, and stuff like that. A lease payment itself on these machines, depending on your local bank or credit union, is only typically between $200 and $300 a month. So using the laser 5 to 10 hours a week pays for that. So when we're talking a $12,000 to $15,000 machine in the U.S., paying it off in 6 months to a year is not unobtainable at all. 5 to 10 hours a week, that's a solid day's worth of production. And hopefully you have a lot more than that.
Absolutely. But I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, 10 hours a week, if you think, I mean, even if you're only running it Monday to Friday, that's only 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's really not, that much, considering the speed of the laser and how much you can get done in that time. Yeah. I think you touched on something really vital, which is just a lot of it just has to do with volume, right? It's, the volume that you anticipate. And then also, if you're thinking of adding this as a second machine, let's say, for example, very much like adding a fiber machine, I would always think if you have a contract come in that you'd like to bid on, that seems like it would, necessitate the use of the machine. It can be that opportunity to kind of
exactly
get your foot in the door kind of thing.
And again, that price range between like the $30 and $60 an hour, that's depending on where you're at. There's always higher and extremes to that, depending on where you're located, what application you're doing, how ornate the material is, and how much post-processing it requires.
Absolutely. We've talked about this before, but yeah, if you're engraving somebody's one of one, great-grandfather's Civil War rifle or something,
exactly.
please charge more than $60 an hour. I wanted to ask you, yeah, this is one that we get a lot on these streams, and we definitely have to do a stream specifically about cleaning the tables. That absolutely needs to happen. But I have to ask you if you have any tips or tricks that you could recommend.
So first and foremost, I understand, like, some people are OCD and it's going to get dirty. It is designed to get dirty, so that's first and foremost. But cleaning it, I like to use like grill cleaner, and you can spray it on. Not in the machine, of course. You're going to take it out of your machine and then kind of let it sit, and then you could wash it off. Some of my customers use a power washer or like go to a car wash and do it. I've never done that personally because I think it would be a little bit too aggressive, but using just a regular hose and just kind of washing it off. But again, expect it to get dirty again in another week. It's just a thing. You can always have a backup table in there as well. But I understand some materials like wood, or depending on like MDF or like maple and stuff like that, they do leave a lot of sap, so I understand it. But again, expect it to get dirty again in a couple weeks.
100%. And I completely second the grill cleaner. That's my go-to as well. Yep. Taking the table out of the machine, soak it down with the grill cleaner, use like a hose or something, and just kind of rinse it off, and it's no problem, good as new. A dirty table just means you're working a lot, realistically. In my mind, though, so it's always good. Yeah.
And feel free to use the whole laser bed. Most people use that top left corner, and that's where you see it gets really dirty. To help the motion system, wear evenly, don't be afraid to use it in the top right corner, the bottom left corner, the bottom right corner, and just spread that wear across there, especially if you have like a divot or dent in your table. These lasers should function, the full bed size. There's not a margin on there, so.
Absolutely. And that's a good point too. That's one that I still fall into. The top left corner of all my lasers in my showroom is 10 times more used than
the same thing.
Yeah. Tim, from what I can see, the box looks really good, brother. Is it? Yeah.
All done. Yeah, all done.
That was fast.
Nice. It was fast.
Yeah. Just shows how easily everything comes together.
Yep.
The quick return on investment you're getting.
In terms of calculating the curve for that, was that something you had to do the curve calculations before with man, that's nice.
Well, I didn't. It's just because the artists that we got this from did a really, really great job of doing it.
Sweet.
They nailed it on this. And again, the other cover as well. Beautiful. Like I love this. It looks great.
Ditto.
So this file came with two options. So we have the flat cover and the specialized artistic one. Looks great.
That's really nice. Thanks, man.
And all done on the R400.
I will. I'll throw this over to Rob really quickly. So obviously this depends on use of the laser, but what do you usually tell customers in terms of lifespan for the laser tube?
The glass DC sources typically last you between 2 and 3 years, and that's depending on usage and then climate. If you don't change the water in your chiller, that kind of shortens that life of it. So if you change that water every 6 months, you can expect 2 to 3 years of lifespan out of those tubes. They are a lot cheaper to replace. We don't recharge them like a traditional ceramic core tube. We just replace the tube itself. And that's something that the user can install themselves. With all the machines that we sell, we send the self-installation videos on there. So changing out the tube does take about 30 minutes. That's from start to finish. And then adding the water lines back in there and just doing a quick beam alignment. I keep seeing another question pop up about the temperature operation of the machine. Again, I still like to say it's the same as our regular Speedy line, which is about 60 degrees Fahrenheit to about 90 degrees. But again, with the chiller, we have a little bit more room to play with on it. But still about the same.
Amazing how many of these streams I've done. I can still accidentally mute myself sometimes.
I saw your lips moving, and I was like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I was just throwing my voice. Barb also points out, so I wasn't familiar with TSP powder, but I did a really quick Google search in the back end here, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of
I'll have to do that as well. See, that's the cool thing, and everyone. I consider myself a laser expert, but Barb just gave us another option as well. Throwing different stuff on there, and that's how I learned too. Some of the tricks that I've learned over time, I didn't come up with myself. I'm borrowing them from a customer and then telling them all to the rest of my customers. So
Oh, I can't tell you how many demos I've had with customers where somebody will call me a genius for something I've unabashedly ripped off of Dave. Just 100 million times. That laser hack with the paper towel underneath. Like I've started crediting him whenever I use it, just because I feel bad that I'm just unabashedly stealing credit for a really good idea. We're just about to hit the top of the hour here, so we will maybe start to wrap things up. But I will, again, just a huge thank you to everybody who's joined us in the chat today, for OK Moss, I mean, Jerry, STM, everybody who's in, Hival, Amy, also Bob. Again, I really suggest to you guys, if you haven't seen the R machines for yourself, it's absolutely worth either going out to an event near you or to a showroom near you. If you can see one in person, not only are they awesome, but I really think in terms of either your first machine or an additional machine, they really make a lot of sense to a seasoned laser user or to a new laser user. That's kind of why I get so excited about them. Just a last question I'll throw over to you, Rob. In terms of like the R machines, kind of going forward, I guess, if you had this minute to sort of pitch to whoever's out there, like the R machine again, like in a nutshell, maybe kind of wrapping it up on that side, I guess, what would be your pitch to come out and check out the R machine? Who's that machine for?
Sure. So if you've never used a laser before, the R series is a great kind of starter machine. Real easy to kind of pay back the machine. Obviously, we've got the Speedy line, which is our more industrial line, but the R series itself does all of that at a more affordable price point. The software that we're currently using on the machine is the Rayjet Commander software, so it's real easy to learn. You're starting in Illustrator or Corel Draw. You're using red for cutting, black for engraving. We're going to file print. It sends it into our job queue. If that's a thing product that you're going to use over and over and over again, it's going to stay in there. But operation of the laser, it teaches you how to focus, how to properly exhaust the machine out, and it's just a pretty quick learning curve, and then get you well on your way and make your money back.
100%. They are available right now.
Yes, they are.
That's the best. That's the best part. I love that as a closing question. Thank you.
7 to 10 days.
7 to 10 days. I think I can't speak to it in Canada, but I think it's around the same amount. I'd have to ask Lev, but so far as I know, yes, we have stock. Thank you, sir. Simple and to the point, Lev. That's why I love it.
Yeah, we have stock.
Yes. So yeah, I think that will probably do it for today. I mean, a huge thank you to Tim and to Rob for coming on today.
Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Of course. Anytime. I'm sure we want to do one of these in not too long for the R500. And we had some questions too about using the rotary specifically with Ruby, and also the rotary specifically with the R machine. So that's something that I think Tim and I are going to try and dream up here for some week in the future. Definitely something we still want to do. No question. It's in the works. Rob, if you'd like to join us for that one too, you're obviously more than welcome. Yep. But yeah, another huge thank you to everybody in the chat. Don't forget, if you'd like to see one of these machines for yourself, you can always go to troteclaser.com. It'll put you in contact with your local Trotec. Come on out, see a demo, do one online, whatever you like, and I'd be very, very happy to have you. I'll say thanks so much on behalf of Tim, Rob, and myself, and we'll see you guys again next Friday for another